of the 17th Herzliya Conference. If we could all be seated so that we could begin this session. Anyone who can possibly be seated, please do so. Let us honor this session. My name is Mr. Jonathan Davis. I'm the Vice President for External Affairs and the head of the Raphael Recanati International School at the IDC Herzliya, where we have 1,800 students from 80 countries. Now the moment has come for the presentation of the Herzl Award to Ambassador Zalman Shoval. It is an honor for me to invite the former ambassador of Israel to the United States and Professor Uriel Reichman, president and founder of the IDC, for the conferment of the Herzl Award for his determined perseverance in the serving of the State of Israel. Twice he served as the ambassador of Israel to the United States under 2 prime ministers and 2 American presidents, the Bush Senior and Junior. He was actually elected to the Knesset twice, once in one of the parties and then the Likud, and a member of the Foreign and External Affairs and in the subcommittee for finances, and he was part of the entourage of the delegation to the United Nations and that represented Israel in the delegation to the European Parliament, and as Dayan he was appointed to be responsible for all external affairs and foreign ministry during Begin's government, and he participated in the signing of the accord with the Egyptians and the Madrid conference, and he was part of the negotiations with the Palestinians and at the Y conference. And in 1999 he was awarded a prize in California, and after his studies in Tel Aviv he did his MSc in social sciences at Berkeley, California, and then specialized at University of Geneva in Switzerland on international relations. And and he also teaches at the Dayan Center, the Ariel Center, and of course at the IDC Herzliya, which is of course the most important of all for us. He's a member of the directors at the IDC and the consulting body, and he was awarded a special prize for his contribution to the relations between America and Israel by the American Association of Friends. He's a very dear, cherished friend of all the Herzliya conferences through the years, and not only of the IDC itself, but also the ICT. And so it is an honor for me to now invite Professor Uriel Reichman to award this Herzl Award, the shield. I just wanted to say, after all that, the scroll that Jonathan Davis said, I would like to give a very personal vote of gratitude from the bottom of my heart that you were with us from the very first day of the IDC, from when they didn't believe in this endeavor, but with your tranquility, your serenity, your friendship, you came and you supported and you were with us. So with only friends like you did we succeed in reaching the point that we have reached. So I would like to deeply thank you for your friendship, your support, and really with all my heart say thank you very much. Here, come, if you could probably stand at the forefront of the stage here. Thank you very much. In fact, you don't need to thank me, I need to thank you. It is not only this recognition, but this very unique example of a Herzl Award because not only was Herzl in Basel, not only did he found the state of the Jews, but he restated the Jewish people as a nation, not as a kind of gathering of religion alone, or tribes, as it's said nowadays, but really a national people, a nation. And Herzl, and for those who followed in his footsteps, Weizmann, Ben-Gurion, and to a certain degree Jabotinsky as well, they understood that in order to promote the Jewish and Zionist idea, one needs to act in the international arena as well, because without that we would not be able to reach what we have achieved. And it was only thanks to those personages who worked in the international arena, and that is an important lesson for all these talented students who learn here as the future leaders and the future diplomats. I think these personages, these dignitaries whose names I mentioned, I believe that there's no contradiction between ideology and pragmatism. On the contrary, you can promote ideology through pragmatic means. There's no contradiction, just like between nationalism and cosmopolitanism. In other words, we must remember that, reiterate it, and that is what is done here at the IDC. But just as a last phrase, I would like to say that I am most especially delighted that this award, this prize, this mark of recognition has been awarded to me here in this educational institution, because guided and mentored by Professor Uriel Reichman, this place has a code, not like you think, of true statesmanship and dignity, really. And so therefore, I have a very special vote of gratitude for what you decided upon, and I would like to thank you more than you need to thank me. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Ambassador Zalman Shoval, and now it is a privilege and honor to invite the academic entrepreneur, the ultimate one of the State of Israel, the president and founder of the IDC. And as Zalman stated, Herzl in Basel established what he established. Professor Reichman established here the IDC, which is part of the modern Zionist history. Professor Reichman, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Jonathan. We are now close to the conclusion of the 17th Herzliya Conference. And the truth is that this nearly did not take place this year. What happened was that the security system did not rush to release Major General in Reserves Amos Gilad, probably for very good reasons. They wanted to hold on to him for a little longer. And there were those who suggested we cancel it because of a lack of time. But our policy here at the IDC is that we do not give up. And when we talk about a tradition, we do not actually give in to that kind of pressure. And I knew that the moment Amos Gilad arrives, even if it will be really tightly wrenched into a timetable and time will be of the essence, he'll overcome it, and thus it was. Amos Gilad, Major General in Reserves, is one of those special kind of people who's spoken about behind the scenes quietly, whose stories are told, and his journeys in the Middle East, and his contribution without knowing the detail, although sometimes they are leaked out, but all done quietly. He's a very special person. And his uniqueness and the renown around the world that he is awarded were manifested in various other armies and military systems around the world, various parties and receptions. The U.S. Army, the entire higher echelons of the military in Washington all came in order to express their vote of gratitude for the ties between Israel and the United States and honor him with their highest honor. And it wasn't the only place. In the state of Israel, not only did the entire echelons of the army, but all the ambassadors to Israel joined from Singapore and many other countries. And here I will not enumerate them all, but they all came and thanked him. To Major General Gilad. There are very few people in our security system and in our public leadership who can say that this is not only a great strategist, but a very direct, credible, modest person here, a person of values, a team worker, and one of the wisest people that the security system in the State of Israel has ever come across. I would like to thank you personally, Major General Amos Gilad, for having joined our ranks, for the Zionist values that you have always embedded and encapsulated, that you know how you had to stand on your hind feet and keep to your values despite people who objected. And this conference, you succeeded in convening that, yes, with the help of a number of people in very tough conditions. So at this opportunity, I would like to thank Gila, who you dragged her to come and check the food that was going to be served here, because that's something that you're not that good at. So you delegated that authority. I'd like to come and say thank you. The truth is that this is very moving, and I'm actually close to tears. I've been in many an occasion that were very moving, but nothing like that has ever happened. First of all, the surprise. I used to always sort of think that I would catch every surprise, and this time they managed to surprise me. But I would really like to thank you. Yes, we did organize this conference, and it really did. The proof was in the pudding. We did manage to actually analyze all the various aspects of our national security, and I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I am close to tears. Thank you. I understand things about food, but I suggested that my wife, I understand eating, but my wife understands food more, and that's why she was involved, yes. I would like to deal and talk about a rather complicated issue and say that we find ourselves here on the threshold of our 70th year, facing an internal kind of destabilization that are stealthily sort of really coming in, a process that has started from within. And I invite you all to follow me, step after step, to follow this plot as it unfolds that is threatening our internal unity, our internal existence as a Zionist state. Now just listen. The members of Knesset, Gaffney and Makleb, proposed a bill that would award the Rabbinical Courts the authority to deal on civilian issues if the sides agreed to that in writing, the parties involved. It seemed a very sort of innocent demand. So if two people want that kind of arbitration in a rabbinical court, then there's no reason why not to respect their wishes, both sides. So this kind of bill proposal was ratified by the those specific ministers responsible for that, and it's already had a preliminary reading of the bill in the Knesset. And this is where the drama starts. No one has ever asked, why? What is this for? What are the hidden motives embedded in it and hidden behind it? For many years, these rabbinical courts have arbitrated issues of finances and communities that are thus deliberated. And for those who actually refuse to actually present themselves there, then immediately there are various results and outcome that they have to pay. But this whole arbitration was actually at the basis of this bill proposal. But they are not arbiters in the rabbinical court. They have been officiated not by the two sides, but only because of their legal officiation. If we talk about a real arbitration, any decision of a rabbinical court, according to arbitration laws, would commit them by a civilian edict and decree. They would have to then move over to it, and there that would be enforced. It was obvious in advance that this arbitration, when it was called as such, was stealthily trying to get this through. Then this proposal was, they said, to protect and anchor in court the authority of the rabbinical courts with the agreement of both sides to discuss civilian affairs. Now, who wrote this memorandum? The Ministry of Religion, that is controlled by Shas, and of course this was coordinated with the Ministry of Justice. So if we're talking about judicial rights, the rabbinical courts will be able to fill all its rights. They will be able to have a subjudice, they will be able to actually summons witnesses, summons the sides, and so if there is an arbitration, then of course the appeals would be part of the appellate rabbinical court. In other words, suddenly civilian issues would be discussed and deliberated at the rabbinical courts. One has to understand that the rabbinical courts, they will have a very extensive authority if this actually goes through. In other words, we are saying that so much is controlled by Haredi people. And these entities, according to their beliefs, either because of the pressure of their rabbis, will add to every supplier's contract, whether he be a Muslim, a Christian, or a Jew. They will award authority to the rabbinical courts. In other words, these Haredi suppliers and other people will all add these little caveats and these little articles to all their contracts. Now, what will happen if this is not a Haredi person, but if someone else who is just maybe even a secular person or a religious person, they will also have to actually have that article added to their contracts. And suddenly, in other words, all this will be deliberate. We're talking about the whole deliberations will be changed, and there will be fees taken by people if the halacha actually is embedded in it, as is really asking them and committing them to have to pay that kind of thing, and they will have to appear there and obey to these demands. This is suddenly, this law that is being proposed, not only does it award them the judicial right here, but they're saying that they can also apply a different kind of law to all the issues that they have discussed. In other words, the court can then rule according to the Torah. So the religious law can even deal on commercial issues, on trade issues. The Knesset will shirk the responsibility, will take away the civilian law from itself on entire populations in Israel, and instead of that, they will be transferred to the rabbinical courts without even inquiring and finding out what has been happening behind the scenes in these rabbinical courts. In other words, it's as if the Knesset is ceding its right of legislation, its right of it is delegating authority to the rabbinical courts, and actually this is not the application of of law to the rabbinical courts where this is necessary, but they are delegating authority that there should be rabbinical law that would be applied and would be binding in the State of Israel. All the world, there is a policy of if we're talking about in federal law and other things, there is a kind of unifying of courts there in order to facilitate commerce and trade. You cannot have two actual parallel. You cannot actually find yourself in a situation where you have parallel courts. The result and the outcome in our daily lives will have a terribly detrimental effect on the Supreme Court of Justice, but on all the instances. So in other words, this proposed law will bring about the application of a religious law by these Haredi rabbis, and the results will be total disruptions of the security that is awarded by law, of commerce, transactions, and it'll, instead of this modern law and judiciary that has been developed since the inception of the State of Israel, but the aspect, I think, that is more essential and problematic deals with the core and the pith of the essence of the State of Israel. We're talking about a unification in the courts of all parts of our population. This fragments one law for all. And this national rift will turn us into a halachic, a theological court. If beforehand there was autonomy, and beforehand if they were exempt from the core issues and they didn't have to serve in the military, and there were all other issues. Suddenly there it will prevail everywhere. Since the 50s in the rabbinical courts on issues of marriage and divorce, this was always controversial. It was the basis of the status quo. So this was handed over to the rabbinical courts, however problematic it may have been. But suddenly this is now they are invading the Knesset. The amazing phenomenon is that it was actually explained as, and this is what it says in the draft proposal, is that this integrates, and I'm quoting, with the values of the State of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. In these words, this deep rift, this divisive character that it is proposing. Unfortunately, the Ministry of Justice has shown that they're willing to sacrifice the destruction of civil law in order to promote an agenda of a completely greater Israel under the auspices of a rabbinical court and a halachic state. They only see democracy as a kind of formative kind of framework, but not its essence. The control and the law of the majority, they believe that is not something that they see as egalitarian values, not between men and women, or basic liberties, or social pluralism. They do not accept that. They do not believe in that. If we're talking about Ben-Gurion, Herzl, and Jabotinsky, as it was said here, they envisioned the Jews, first and foremost, as people sharing one homeland, and the Jewish homeland in the Declaration of Independence is a state of Jews wherein there's a freedom of worship and conscience, and liberties, of course, are ensured for all. Amnon Rubinstein, in his new book, talking about the tribes of Israel, he has said the following: ideas of the revolutionary liberal movement during the days of the inception of the states are now facing a revolution, an ideological revolution that wants to create a Jewish Orthodox religious state and not a liberal one. If beforehand things were actually represented in a status quo, now they are metamorphosing that. There is a cultural war. They are conquering this kind, all the laws, and that in order to turn this into a Haredi state. Now, they are if we're talking about these laws that will be competing over all commercial issues, they will be politically decided because of the result about this struggle on the identity. If anyone wanted to actually weaken the status of the Supreme Court of Justice, who should have been safeguarding people's rights, now they are having a deadly blow aimed at them. And therefore, if we're talking about identity and rifts that we are going to now witness, if we're talking about all various allegiances and a crucible and a gathering of all the Jews. Instead of that, we would have liked to have seen the liberal values, a Jewish state, a humane state, a democratic state. Instead of that, we are seeing something else. In other words, secular and religious with a liberal worldviews enabled the existence of this shared home for people with different views. The Holocaust created that this would be the last struggle for the Jewish people. And if we do not identify with this homeland, the sense of a mission, of a vocation, and everything that is happening abroad and here, then the state of Israel would not have had to face all the actual obstacles and challenges on its path. Most of the Haredi did not identify with the Jewish nationality and all their other values. And therefore, this national narrative and the socialist one was the one that prevailed. We're in the tradition and religion. We're part of things that perhaps maintained our culture and our religion. But it was something that people could choose, each man on his own. Never coercion. The victory and in the Six-Day War and the reunification created a kind of emotional identification with Judea and Samaria, and it turned, these messianic values turned this struggle into one for a greater Israel. And the war of the attrition continued that, and that leadership that from the very beginning led after the Yom Kippur created a kind of those who believe in control. They suddenly took over things like Judea and Samaria, the West Bank and other places. In other words, the revisionistic Likud continued subsidizing this liberal beliefs, but a lot of those in the Haredi and religious population, then the Haredis really overcame that. And instead of that, suddenly we found the more radicals of those Haredis really were taking over. But now the real revolution is taking out, because they're now no longer in a sense of closure. They're not convening and converging within themselves.
The natural growth brought a large electoral body that made the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox, very sought-after voters. Apparently the bill regarding the rabbinical civil law shows the sense of power of the Haredi camp. It seems that the national religious camp agreed to collaborate. The Haredi, the MK, and Gafni initiated. The Minister of Justice, as the chair of the Ministers' Committee, agreed. Shas, the Sephardi religious party, agreed as well. And we can assume that other factors will also try to get to a Jewish religious state with partial democracy. And two camps are going to be created between the Jews here and in the world. Are we facing a large camp that is going to strive towards the religious aspect of the state and actually to have a halachic law here? If such a coalition will be formed, then the internal rift will grow, because the cohesion of the halachic camp will see the secular people as opponents, although this has not been completed yet, but incitement against the liberal Zionist camp is already in place. Anybody who dares say something against the annexation is already boycotted, as if he's the enemy of the people. Entire public which is very loyal, is called names. And there's an obsession of the government and attempts to try to control the media. The Supreme Court is slandered as a protector of Palestinians, and they try to prevent it from protecting the democratic rights of the citizens. Ethnical groups try to recruit people to the religious camp. The supervision of Shabbat in various cities and the derivatives of that, of defining a Jewish religious country, are already infiltrated to the ministries of education and justice, and that's going to create a real bureaucracy. The government finds it very easy to propose a national law while actually separating the people and trying to create camps while violating the balance. The IDC was established as an NGO without asking for or not getting a penny from any governmental body. We were recognized because of our academic level and because of the freedom of occupation and the dignity of man. From the beginning of the road, we said that our goal is to train the future leadership of the Israeli society in the spirit of the original Zionist values. That's what we've been doing for 23 years. We fulfilled this perception with the deeds. In the international school, we have Jewish students from abroad more than in any other academic institution in Israel, and most of them come on Aliyah, immigrate to Israel at the end. More than 50 voluntary programs are activated by our students. They volunteer and show social responsibility. The IDC supports people who serve in reserves. They have a special programs for the elite unit members in the IDF. Our graduate created a system where they manage through the social media the battle against the incitement of the BDS, which delegitimizes Israel. The IDC is an open institute that enables economically other students to study in this institution. We also foster leadership among the Israelis from the Ethiopian communities, and we have Jews and Arabs, religious and secular, from Israel and abroad. And of course, as opposed to others, we will never have any alienation of women. It's not surprising then that the IDC was the first to answer the call of the president to try and bridge the various tribes of Israel. We saw that as a spirit of Zionism that believes in democracy for all. Because of this commitment, it's our responsibility to tell the truth and to go against the conflicts in the state of Israel. The state of Israel has a lot of achievements in security, economy, in science. Some of them took many suffragises. Everybody was engaged, and this was achieved because when we perceived the Zionism, religion was really something that individuals could interpret, nothing to do with the government. Judaism is a nation, it's not a political entity, said Jabotinsky, and Ben-Gurion said that the past is our property. We are not a property of the past. Herzl was vehemently against the involvement of rabbis in the state. The Zionist outline is the one that will enable us to live together and to form our future in Israel. The Scroll of Independence said that we have a social covenant, and now deviating from it is a real imminent danger for the original Zionists and our life here. Let's remember Herzl's words. The rabbis, as much as they're revered, but they can only deal with religion and have nothing to do with politics. The rule of rabbis has a lot of dangers. A personal interpretation of a charismatic rabbi can move his worshippers to risk their lives for very noble causes. But at the same time, we can see altruistic evil, something that's done for the purpose of evil, like Jonathan Sacks said, the former chief rabbi of Britain, when his book, Not in God's Name, when somebody, believer, faces a religious incitement, he is afraid. He's ready to hate anybody else who's not part of the group and then act with violence. The history of our people, we have awful examples of Jews killing Jews because of their religious beliefs. In the new era, let us not forget the murder of the Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin by somebody who thought that he's doing something ideological, a mission. It's enough if we look around us and see countries, groups, and societies that are controlled by religious priests on behalf of God. We already mentioned Smotrich, the MK. The state of Israel have to ensure the freedom of religion and faith, but just in the entire enlightened world, we cannot be dragged to a religious state. This is our watershed, but we cannot live except by the civil justice. But we do need today a new covenant in the same spirit that offered the Constitution for Israel in 87. It will enable our mutual existence, but will stop Israel from becoming a halachtic state. And if this bill that we're talking about will not be taken away, and the religious sectors will have an separate opportunity, it's obvious that the secular people that don't have this arrangement will want the same thing. They will fight for their freedom. And so Jews in Israel will not have to get married and to divorce under the rabbis. And then the municipalities can decide how to keep the Sabbath or not to keep it. All the non-Zionist rabbis will have nothing. There'll be a complete separate between them and the Jews in the United States. No question that a federative governance will solve this problem, but also will do away with the very breadth of the Zionist state. Two processes that started a while ago are now towards their end. The continuous erosion of the status of the Supreme Court. If this continues, together with the threat on the blurring of the Zionist Jewish identity of the church, will finally make this place a religious halachic state sooner than we believe it. This new proposal of secular justice system, this is a perception that the state has to act accordingly, are the watershed point at the time. A large public, together with the leaders, agreed with these processes, but we're not going to give up the principles of Zionism that ensures the future of the state. That's how we went to fight, and that is the story of our life. Today we call upon creating a vast camp. Let's go back to the origins of Zionism and protect them.